I would like to welcome you all to this morning session on seabed minerals. Where are we today? My name is Kristina Abildgaard, and I'm the director of the Ocean and Polar Research Department in the Research Council of Norway. And I have the great pleasure to moderate this session. We will have 4 presentations, and then we will have a panel discussions. And we will not invite you to ask questions directly after the presentation, but you will be given the opportunity during the panel discussion to comment and ask questions. But just to set the scenes, why this interest in seabed minerals? Well, of course, there is a great demand for key minerals driven by the technology development for energy technology and also smartphones and for defense and space industry. There will be an increased production of key minerals, but there will also be a supply gap. According to the International Energy Agency, it will be a 30% supply gap of copper and 40% of lithium by 2035. That's according to the global outlook on minerals. Secondly, there's also a great concern on the concentration on the production, geographical production, and that is quite, that few are controlling it. And also due to this geopolitical situation, this is an increased worry, and that's also why people are more interested in seabed minerals. And the third reason for the attention to seabed minerals is the discourse and the worrying about the potential impact of the environmental impact of extraction of minerals in the seabed. And probably you know that there is more than 40 countries that has announced a support on a moratorium to set a pause, a precautionary pause, until we have more in place when it comes to regulation and fair play and so on. And the fourth aspect is the cost. I mean, drilling in the deep sea is many thousand meters we are talking about. It is, you need a lot of technology and infrastructure, subsea vehicles and all mining equipment, and also support on the surface. So, of course, that will be an extremely cost, and who's willing to take that risk? But where are all these minerals? Well, it is estimated that most of the minerals in the seabed is beyond national jurisdiction, and that is under the area of the International Seabed Authority governance. And what is the International Seabed Authority? They are an autonomous organization that was established under UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, and it is authorized to try to give authorization and control and regulation within the area when it comes to the use of seabed minerals resources. So, and they have now given more than 30, issued 30 permissions to exploitation. No, exploration, not exploitation. That was Kristina, you must be very clear. It's not exploitation, it's exploration. So, is there any minerals within the national jurisdiction? Yes, of course. That's what we are great concerned about. It's probably quite a lot of seabed minerals in between the Norwegian and the Greenland shelf. And there you will, of course, there will be the Norwegian government and parliament that are decided whether we should do mining or not. That's within our jurisdiction. And so who is the authorizing and regulating mineral activities in Norway? Then we come to the Sokkeldirektorat, the offshore directorate, which so now it's very appropriate then to start these presentations. And the first one is Stig Morten Knudsen from the Norwegian Offshore Directorate. You will give a presentation to show us the status and plan for the filling the gaps. So please, Stig Morten.
Thank you. Do I need a microphone?
I think you should have.
Oh. Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm not going to shout that much. So, can you start the presentation, please? Oh, there you are. Thank you. So, I'm from the Norwegian Offshore Directorate. I am Stig Morten Knudsen. That was already said. I'm trained as a geologist. I've been working with Seabed Minerals for about 10, 15 years or something like that. I've been many places, done many things, but that's not of relevance today. Very briefly, if you want to sort of one takeaway from what the knowledge status and the plan for filling the gaps is, the knowledge status is that the Norwegian Parliament and the Norwegian government thinks that there is enough knowledge to open the areas in the Norwegian Greenland Sea for seabed mineral activity. And it is open for seabed mineral activity. And I'll come back to that. What is halted and what has been sort of put on hold, that is the first concession round. Now I'll get to that as well. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm also going to talk about the plan for filling the gaps. And then what really is interesting to discuss it, which gaps do you want to fill? And who is to decide that these are the gaps that we should fill? And then comes the second or third question, and that is really, what do you want to do with your knowledge? And I think I've been a scientist, I've been working in academia, I've been a researcher, I've been in the industry, and now I'm as a regulator. But I think we all sometimes should ask ourselves, what do we want to do with our knowledge? Okay, so do I need to click here, I guess? Next. So, the outline, this is very small, and I'm sorry for that. In addition, I know that I have some slideshows that you won't see because it's been corrupted. But anyways, that's okay, I'll talk to this. So the outline is, what do we do where? Who do it? And who should do it? And why do we do it? So where are we? And that's sort of the map, if you can see that on your right-hand side. That's really a map of the area that is open for seabed mineral activity. That's in red. So we are down here, a little bit north of Narvik within Tromsø. So this is Greenland, this is Svalbard and Longyearbyen. And then you have a lot of dots on that map. And that is the different types of either sulfides or crust and so that we have mapped. And I won't go, I'm a geologist, I could talk for length about those, but that's not what I'm going to do. The reason I'm showing that map is that map is about 600 kilometers exactly out that way. So when I went out and do all that mapping that I'm going to show you some of, we usually started in Tromsø and then we went out there and we did the mapping. And then we get to that map that you can see here. And the second part of that map, why it is important, is that we put all that data out in the public. So you can all go to our homepage and you can access those data, and that is sulfides, that is manganese crust, that is sediments, that is volcanic, and biology. There's a lot of talk about biology. And different type of samples that you can access. And if you want to come to our core store in Stavanger, you can even grab samples and do whatever you, well, not whatever, but how you want to analyze them. So that's what you also can do. And this is just an example of what we are looking for. I am a resource manager, to put it that way, in the Sokkeldirektoratet, so I'm looking for resources. Mineral could be a resource. Seabed mineral could be a resource. And this is from Gygra, so this is taking about 200 kilometers off Svalbard, and about 2,500, 3,000 meters depth, I think, if I don't remember too incorrectly. So, and this was the slideshow that I was supposed to show, but what it really shows is the different types of processes on the regulative side that has been going on the Norwegian continental shelf. And what was the first one is actually the seabed mineral law that we took, was approved by the parliament in 2017. And still, and so far, I think Norway is the only country in the world that has a seabed mineral law. So everybody's shouting for regulations, but we actually do have a regulation. And it was in place 7-8 years ago. Then we have an opening process. We had an impact assessment, we had a resource evaluation, and then we had a white paper that came out in 2023, and it was approved in 2024, that said that, yeah, the Norwegian government and parliament would like to open the area that you see, and you saw on the previous slide, for seabed mineral activity. The main driver, and that is, I know it's kind of boring maybe to read white papers, but if you really want to dig into seabed mineral activity, that white paper, which is almost not seen, you can find it online and wherever, I would recommend you to read that. Because that gives the background for where we are and what we have done, and why we have done it. And the main driver for open up for seabed mineral activity is to gain knowledge. To gain knowledge. And then comes, of course, the discussion, how do you do it? Do you do it enough? Do you do it in a proper way? And et cetera, et cetera. And that's really what the big discussions have been about. And then, in 2024, the Energy Ministry put out that map and said, these is the areas in yellow, which is probably the only color you can see. These are the areas that we would like to nominate or propose for the first concession round for seabed mineral exploration. And then, there was an agreement in the parliament due to the budget, which put that one on hold. So that's sort of where we are. So that's what happened. That's the process up until today. And then just a little curiosity. Everybody says, oh, look at all those yellow areas. Those are big. Those are, ooh. But you know what? Those areas that you see on that map, that is actually smaller than the areas that Norway in 1965 opened for petroleum activity. And what did we know about petroleum activity in the North Sea in 1965? So how much do you want to know before you take the next step? And that's also maybe a kind of a fundamental questions that we would like to ask ourselves. This is really hard to see, but what it really shows, and that's a big table and lots of small numbers, oops, impossible to read, but what it really shows is all the data that we and the scientific community from 1999 has acquired in the opening area. And it's a lot. Among other things, there's so much video that you can actually drive ROV videos and look upon it for almost one continuous year. And then you can enjoy it, and you can look at geology, and you can look at biology, or you can do your counting, whatever you'd like to do. And most of it, if not all of it, is already out in the public. Oh, sorry. Okay. She's getting up. What we are doing to fill that gap that everybody is shouting about, we are still trying to fill that gap. So we are going out this year. We are going to continue mapping with high-resolution echo sounder this year. We have an agreement with, for instance, University of Tromsø and Helmer Hansen. We're also going out doing ROV operations with Klumpen Såken, and in total with that, we're going to have more than 50 operational days. So we are still working on it. We are also acquiring geology data, but also environmental data. And here comes one thing that very often is disregarded. And I would like to give credit to Bergverk and to Aker BP, which has developed what they call the deep sea. Aker BP is a commercial company. Bergverk is a consultant company. But what they have done, they have made an AI system that actually can map the biology based on all those a year's data of video that you can find from us or from others. That's how quickly this moves if you just allow industry to get along. So this should also be a little fancy-pantsy thing, but it comes on top of each other. So why do we do it? Well, we do it for resource management. We do it for gaining more knowledge. We, as I said in the beginning, the purpose for seabed mineral activity, as we call it in Norway, is to gain knowledge. And we do cooperate a lot. Last year, we gave about 70 million for a deep sea AUV to University of Bergen. We also did, what is shown here, a new multi-beam to Håkon Helmer Hansen, not Håkon Mosby, Helmer Hansen. So this is where they put it on in a shipyard in Svolvær. And that cost $7 to $8 million kroner. We also have a lot of international cooperation. Myself, I've been on a German research vessel. But we also, and I would like to highlight this one, we actually do have a Nordic cooperation in the Northeast Atlantic area with Greenland, Denmark, the Faroes, and Iceland. So everybody is interested in knowledge, and so are we. And then comes, of course, the next one. What do we do with it, as I said? So seabed mineral activity is on hold on the Norwegian continental shelf, not due to lack of data, but due to political budget agreement. The policy and environmental resource management for seabed activity on the NCS, as decided by the Parliament, remains in effect. And finally, the NOD, us, and the science community continue to acquire and analyze data. So that's, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Stig Morten, for a very comprehensive presentation, and we learned a lot, I think, about what the government and you have been preparing and working with. So the next speaker now is Annette Tvedt. She's the CEO of Adept Minerals. And I think you should all know that Adept Minerals was successful in a very hard competition in a call with funding of a green platform project, which is a program that is going to promote, facilitate the green transition for the industry. And you succeeded, and you received money for this project, where you are the goal is to reduce 80% reduction in the environmental footprint compared to current land-based mining by developing technology for environmentally friendly production and processing. That's what you say in the project. So now we are very excited to hear about the project and what you have learned so far. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much, Christina, and nice to see you all this morning. So if I can get my slides, there they are. I don't need the slides for the first thing I want to discuss. I want to discuss this rock. This is from Gygra. Stig Morten already showed Gygra. This is a gem I am holding. It's not a diamond, but this is a gem to me. This is a sulfide, and it's been assayed, so I know what it contains. And it contains approximately 20% copper. That is more than 100 times the global average of the producing copper mine today. So that is why this is a gem to me. So this rock, it's not from kilometers underground. It's from the seabed. It can be hard to get, but we've been able to get it quite easily with equipment that is proven, safe, and usable for over decades. But so you can't build a cell phone out of this or a network. You need the end product. So that's what we've been looking at, as Christina nicely introduced our project. So we've been looking at the entire value chain for seabed minerals. We've been looking at how to explore, find these deposits, how to produce them, how to process them, and how we can do that with the least impact. And we've done that together with amazing partners, as you can see here. Since it's a little bit small screen, I'll tell you out loud. It's strong industry partners like Aker BP, Deep Ocean, NOV, the Future Materials Norwegian Catapult Center, Ondero, Seabed Solutions, Shearwater Geoprovider, and GC Ocean Technology. And then we had the strongest academic and research institutions in Norway, I would say, both the University of Bergen, Tromsø, Norris, NTNU, and Aquaplan Niva. So I've been fortunate to work with these guys solving trying to demonstrate the entire value chain. So since this is a very short presentation, I'll show you what this ended up in. So we went from this rock to this, and this is a copper medallion. So proven it's a sellable product, and basically proof of demonstration of the entire value chain. So we managed to go from rock to copper during the project, which is a huge accomplishment. So I wanted to show you a little bit of why we've reached that goal, and a little bit of a glimpse of what our research project has been about. And one of the most important thing is to do real science. And you don't do real science just on your desktop. You need to get out there. And we've been very fortunate to go out on research expeditions all 3 years of the project, at the very start and toward the very end. And these research expeditions has not only given us very important data, but it has been given us also the ability to test and mature technology, methodology, so that we can ensure how we do this in the best possible manner. So the data has given us important insights in how to build our work program for exploration properly, how we potentially can produce it, and how we can process these materials. So this is what it looks like out there. This is us in 2023. We're out here. We're at the eyes of an ROV, monitoring our own operation, and that was a key part, monitoring ourselves. This is another ROV, and this is a coring unit. So not a big drill ship. This is a small coring unit, approximately less than this size here. So it's not a big machine. It's a small coring unit that can be used for exploration, and it's proven to deliver quite well. This is another thing we were doing on the expedition, collecting data. Here we're seeing one of these video transects that you can look at for a year. And we're looking at the sea bottom above a sulfide deposit. Because that was what we did the first year. We actually drilled unintentionally into a massive sulfide deposit, which gave us extinct one, very important, extinct. Gave us very much important knowledge about the resources and the environment around such resources. So basically, all these research expeditions have been enabled us to build a very detailed work program. This is the high-level image of it. Basically, we're going out first with smaller vessels to do the more regional studies, and as we kind of mature our prospects, then we go out with larger and larger vessels and collecting more data from the seabed itself. And the next step we did in the project was to look at how can we produce these deposits. And during the project, we've developed a closed-loop system for extracting these minerals. We've minimized energy consumption. We've developed technology where it's completely closed or almost completely closed. We have designed a filter unit where we try to limit as much as we can out of this sediment outlet from the work we're doing. We've also looked at processing, and processing is a very complex procedure. So this is a simplified kind of flow sheet of processing, how it's done today. And we've looked at that. Can sulfides be processed using the existing facilities? Yes, they can. Can we do this better? Yes, we can. So that is the short answer to that. We've tried several different methods. We've had copper extracted from the rock itself. We have copper extracted from the fluids. It's been a very, very good progress in that, and ending up with this copper medallion, which was just handed to me just before Christmas. So I was very, very happy, and I'm very pleased to deliver this on very shortly to NFR. Did I spend all that time already? Okay, so there's huge potential out there. This graph here is showing kind of how some of these deposits have quite high copper grades as of now. This is from the samples collected as of now, and we would have gone out and investigated these and other potential later on. Just want to comment on one thing. We've proven the value chain, demonstrated that. Christina, you said it's extremely expensive. It's not. We will make this economical. And we see lower capex than on land-based projects, quite a 50% reduction in that. Operational cost per kilo rock transported to sea may be higher, but if you have high copper grade, it's lower OPEX per kilo rock you transport to the vessel. So Norwegian seabed minerals could give us energy security, value creation, significant value creation, and be the most responsible minerals that we would ever see in our cell phones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette, for visualizing the projects. That was also very comprehensive and interesting. So we will switch to the next speaker, which is Endre Tvinnerheim. And he is professor at the University of Bergen and has studied public perception of deep sea mining. And public perception of deep sea mining is largely characterized by caution and opposition driven by fears and environmental damage to ocean ecosystems. And Stig Morten, you also told us about the budget negotiation in December when the Green parties were celebrating that they were able to put the deep sea mining on hold. So, but the Parliament's decision, do they really reflect the attitude of the entire public or the society? Maybe it's more complex, maybe not. So, Endre, you can tell us a bit more about the variation in support and criticism among different groups. And your presentation is titled Public Opinion and Deep Sea Mining, What to Expect.
Thank you very much. Can you go one slide back, please? I think I had a title for this because, yes, because actually I'm afraid this has been a little oversold. I don't actually have data on exactly what Norwegians think about deep sea mining, but I will talk about something that various results around that, and then we will be fielding a study next month. So we will get data quite soon. So just not to get ahead of ourselves too much. But okay, so next please. What do we expect? Of course, public opinion, and we've already heard about how deep sea mining is being, oh yes, thank you. All right, technology. And there's a back button as well. All right, fantastic. Okay, so the court of public opinion is actually important when it comes to these things, as we already know from the parliamentary decision, the budget deal that was mentioned already. So that is really important, and also even issues that are quite complicated, far away down on the bottom of the sea, could suddenly become significant to people in politics, and that's why it's important to study this and at least to know something about what to expect. So I'll go through a couple of questions here. What can we expect from Norwegian public opinion? Why should we care? Well, I've said something about that already. I will present an American study on DSM opinion from last year, and then we'll get into some questions that are related to that in Norway. Okay, so but why should we really care? I'm just looking at the clock down there. Okay, very good. So one thing, of course, is the parliamentary decision to postpone this for 4 years. But I think also there are normative reasons why we should care about what people think. That is just the right thing to do, because people really should have a say in this. But you also have these the more instrumental ways of thinking about or purposes of public opinion. Basically, you want to do a project and you just want to persuade people to go along with it and accept it. This is the sort of annoying thing that social scientists used to be invited to 10, 15 years ago, to Horizon 2020 projects, where you had engineers and then you just get some social scientists in to just do the PR, basically. So we don't like that too much, but that is definitely one thing. And then there is a final, maybe the synthesis of it all, which is the substantive way of or purpose of consulting. You actually want to get people along, and maybe you could even improve the project and avoid some of the worst excesses, but also get projects that are grounded and are less likely to have a backlash against them. And I'll mention just two important examples of that. One is electricity prices, and the other one is wind turbines. So 10, 15 years ago, we asked people, what about wind turbines on land? Is that a good thing? And what about using electricity prices, increasing them to reduce emissions from greenhouse gas emissions? People were like, yeah, that's good. There were majorities in favor of that in Norway 10, 15 years ago. And we all know now that didn't really hold, did it? So it is quite important to know something about this. And if you want to read more about that, Andy Sterling has a great article on it. Okay, but let's get into the American study from Morton et al. From last year in Environmental Research Letter. They did a survey experiment, and they asked basically, are you for or against deep sea mining, as explained briefly in the survey? And then they had 4 conditions. One was just a control just are you for or against? And then they had these frames. What about if deep sea mining can relieve pressure on land? And what about it if, but what about the fisheries? Could it damage fisheries? And then finally, this is necessary because China and other countries are dominating this sector, and therefore we need to act. And this is done experimentally, so very quickly we found, or they found, that the only information treatment that really made the difference was this international security frame. The pollution and the fisheries didn't really move public opinion relative to the control condition. We're going to do a similar one next month, as I mentioned, just watch this space, and we'll do the same thing, and we'll also add the potential for economic development in Norway, which Annette mentioned. So we'll see what happens. So this could be quite exciting when the data come in. Yeah. So as I mentioned, this is the result, and this is the U.S.-China security frame, which shows a significant effect above the average. Above the control condition. All right, but we know something about Norwegian public opinion about the ocean and related environmental issues. We did a project, an EU project on carbon dioxide removal in various European countries, and we did what we call a deliberative poll, where we had a survey, and then we asked people to sit in a room, a virtual room that was during COVID, and then discuss various aspects related to negative emissions, and then we surveyed them again afterwards. So it's pretty comprehensive consultation exercise. It didn't really move people's opinion much, but people did become more confident in their assessments of these various technologies. This is not DSM, but it's also below the sea and far away, and not something that people see every day. And I just want to read out two quotes here. So one was that one person said, "I think it seems like we have more control over what is on land, and that at sea it gets very uncertain and many unknown factors that may well make it fail." And another one said that, "But this is perhaps where I think that one should prioritize the things that are both inexpensive and ecologically safe, not do big interventions that have big consequences." And a third person mentioned aquaculture. Maybe you should move this to land because we can know what's going on. People definitely wanted more research, and they were skeptical about tampering with nature. So that's a Norwegian study. And I think I will just skip the stuff about what politicians and bureaucrats say, but we are seeing a decline recently in the technology optimism in Norway. I wanted to mention that. That was my talk. I think I will, in particular, I want to stress that this is clearly something that most people don't engage with so much, but it is important to at least be in contact with the court of public opinion to see where these things develop. And next month we will know more about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Endre. I'm sure we will look forward to your publication next month to see the answer. So now I have the pleasure to present the last speaker, which is Simon Holmström, who is Senior Deep Sea Mining Policy Officer in the NGO Seas at Risk. And this NGO's mission is to promote ambitious policies for marine protection at European and international level. And last October, Seas at Risk published a policy brief where you also had the 3 recommendations, and you were talking about the precautionary principles and so on. So I'm quite sure your presentation will also reflect some of those recommendations. So please, Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. There we are. And yes, indeed, that is exactly what I'm going to do with this presentation. A very short one. I think I have too many slides, but let's see if I'm going to make it or not. So yes, indeed, we're a European NGO representing 38 NGOs on marine conservation in Europe. Also Norwegian, Naturvernforbundet, is a member. This seems not to work. To click on next. So yes, The deep sea is, as you know, the Earth's largest biome, but it is yet the biome that remains the least understood. Why? Well, it is deep down. It costs a lot of money to go down there and research, and it is something that actually previously was thought of very barren in terms of a desert. There was a belief many decades ago that this was a landscape that didn't hold any life, and that was a belief that was questioned during the 80s, 90s, during the noughties, and now we know that this is actually not the case. This is a place for unfathomable life, such as this little jellyfish. And it's just so crazy to hear the scientists saying that every time we go down there, we find new life. And so many life forms, even though they have a Latin name, they are undescribed. We don't know exactly their functions in the ecosystem. And they say, please, let us study this more. We are so nerdy, we want to do this. And I think we should. This is a map from the 70s. There's been a new wave of curiosity after that, and that, of course, also includes the mineral resources being down there. There are usually there's a category of 3 different types of mineral occurrences in the deep sea. We have the abyssal plains, and this is something that you probably heard in the media. The nodules being those kind of small potato clumps that contain a lot of different critical raw materials such as nickel, manganese, copper, and cobalt. And these are, plains of exactly what I said. People thought this was the deserts of the deep sea. And now we know that there's so much life there. There's been estimations that 90% of the species in the Pacific, in the Clarion-Clipperton zone, are undescribed. But we do know now that this life holds also microbial life that are critical for carbon sequestration. It takes a lot of time to sequester carbon and also to be part of the carbon cycle. But we have just started to understand how this biome actually plays a role in that as well. The second ecosystem is the hydrothermal vents. And these are superheated fluids, smokers on the deep sea, created by tectonic shifts, by all these minerals and chemical things coming up from the crust and then settling, and then life really loving that. Very endemic, special life forms that like these areas. And here we see the different sulfides that we heard about previously. We have seamounts, which is also a place for different life. There's mountains on the deep sea with different types of creatures that actually live there and mate there, and that food is also transported to other areas from these places, and these hold manganese crusts. Now, we heard about the International Seabed Authority. They have regulations for all these 3 habitats, and within the International Seabed, they have awarded 30 active licenses, we heard about that, on exploration. So companies actually the states that need to sponsor those applications and those activities. So different countries have sponsored companies to do so. Others are state survey organizations. And here we see where, you can't really see it because we have very little screens here, but you might have seen this map before with the different mineral occurrences and different licensed areas. This is the UN body that is charged of doing this. It's the only body, according to the UN Law of the Sea, who has got the mandate to award these licenses. And the technology differs, of course, due to these different these different mineral occurrences. What is often missing from the discourse is the gap between the readiness and the PR of the industry and also the operational reality. Many tests have failed. Many companies have gone bankrupt because of the problems. They say that they will do it very easily and very cheaply, and then it turns out that has not been the case. So nobody has shown that so far commercial deep sea mining can be done, and can be done in an environmental safe way. And these are just a few of the environmental effects that we know that the technology that is underdeveloped and not at all ready may cause to the marine environment. And that is why we believe that we are not at all ready to start this new extractive frontier in the least understood biome on this planet. We do need more baseline data. We need that environmental data to support decision making. Without thresholds, we don't know how to move forward with this. And we need to really embrace the precautionary principle, which says that we need to have that data first to manage and mitigate potential effects. And without threshold data, without the data from impact studies, we are in no way able to grant licenses under different mining codes, whether it be in international jurisdiction or in national jurisdiction. I do not have time with this now, but I think we can go through it during the presentation. The problems with the approaches in national legislation. I want to correct Stig Morten to say that there are around 10 other countries with national legislation that regulates exploration, mostly exploration activities. So Norway is absolutely not the first one. They also have their faults, of course. Norway thinking that it is already a good regulator on oil and gas, but that is a completely other type of activity, and we can't copy-paste that into a new emerging industry. And as you know, the US also wants to bypass the International Seabed Authority through awarding licenses in the Clarion-Clipperton zone. There's also another application, not in that area on the map, but that we can also talk about a little bit later. And here we see the growing opposition to deep sea mining. The EU also saying that even though the EU is not a country, but the EU also saying that this is not something that they would like to do, of the reasons I just mentioned. And that is why we support a precautionary pause or a moratorium, deep sea mining. That is why we say we need to have the breathing space for science to work out before we make any decisions. And that is why we say we need to support the precautionary pause, precautionary principle and international global frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. I think these presentations very well demonstrate the complexity of this area. There are so many different interests and conflict of interest and different objectives. So it's a very challenging task to analyze the needs and try to balance the ambition of deep sea mining or the protection of the environment. So it's quite obvious that when to take these decisions, it must be knowledge-based. The government, the politicians need knowledge, but also we, the stakeholders, need more knowledge. So now when we are going to the panel discussion, we have 3 topics that we will specifically like to address. They are very interlinked. The one is about knowledge gap. This knowledge has been addressed in many of these presentations, but we will look a little bit further into it. Will we ever have sufficient knowledge? And then trust. Who do we trust? And what is reliable data? And then the third topic, which is everything, in fact, balancing these different objectives and interests, shaping the future. Very interesting, very difficult. And Anita Evenset, we will invite you to the floor because you are also participating in the panel. Anita, you are a marine biologist and the director of the environmental department in Aquaplan Niva, where you have worked with different positions for many years. And you have been involved in environmental research related to industries like aquaculture, oil, gas, land mining, and also offshore wind, and also these eminent projects. And some of these industries are controversial, I would say, But anyway, Anita, the floor is you. You'll have a few more comments before we start and invite the rest to the stage. Please, Anita.
Is this working? Yes, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. As Christina said, I'm working for Akvaplaniva, and we're one of the research institutes in Norway that has chosen to work together with industry to gather more knowledge about deep sea mining. And we have been involved in this eminent project that Annette presented. And our task in that project has been to model the sediment plumes, to see how the sediment disperse around the equipment that is used, to have that as a basis for environmental impact assessment. So we have been working with industries in many research projects before. We find it very useful because we can base our assessments on actual information about the operations. We often hear that Norway will do subsea mining in an area on the size of Germany. And of course, that's not the case. So I think it's important that we do the assessments based on what's actually going to happen. And also working with industries, we get up-to-date knowledge about how they do things, and we can also provide advice on how they can do things better, because I think that dialogue is very important.
Thank you very much, Anita. So then I would like to invite all the panelists, the speakers to the stage here. And you are together with Anita. Endre, you as well. It's crowded, but then it's more tight atmosphere. That's good. That's lovely. Okay, then I will start by asking you a question, Anita, since you were the last one on the stage here. And do you think that it's sufficient knowledge about the deep sea ecosystems? It's quite sparse, but when will it be sufficient? And when do you think, do you consider we have sufficient monitoring methods in such depth? Would you say a little bit about this, please?
I think we can all agree that the knowledge about the deep sea ecosystems is very sparse. We don't know very much about all the species that's there. That's probably endemic species that we don't know anything about. As Simon mentioned, we don't know much about connectivity and functioning of the ecosystem. So there's a lot we don't know, even if more data is being gathered. And of course, that is a challenge, and especially when it comes to monitoring. We don't know much about the baseline, and we don't know too much about how these deep sea species will respond to stress, because they live in a stable environment, many places, and so how they will respond is something we need to know more about. So now is really the time to do knowledge gathering and to increase the data, to work with the technology to improve monitoring, because we know today that we don't really have very good monitoring methods that can help us assess impacts in these deep areas. We need to work on that, and we have a very rapid technology development that can help us to do this in a good way, hopefully in the not too far future.
Thank you, Anita. But you can give the microphone to Annette, because I think it's appropriate to ask Annette. And, do you agree with Anita? And what are the obstacles from your side?
I think it's very important that this discussion, like, we need to talk about what's needed for exploration and what is needed for extraction. That is a point that I just want us all to kind of remember when we comment. And so in terms of and monitoring, we have the monitoring equipment that has been established for a long time ago to monitor our exploration. In terms of extraction, we also do have the monitoring equipment, but we need to ensure that we know we're monitoring the right things. And that is very important. So there is a lot of monitoring kind of technology that is already existing and could be monitoring the right things. We just need to ensure that we do that. And in terms of kind of, we do need data in terms of extraction, more data on extraction. For exploration, we do know enough to know that we will create limited impact during our exploration campaigns. We've built them so that we do limited impact doing so. Like during the Eminence project, the researchers that had been going out for 25 years, they were like, oh, can you do this? Will really improve our way of working. And that was like, that collaboration is key in the way ahead for ensuring that we do things right. So I want to comment on so much now. But I know you have other questions, other people here as well. So.
Yeah, and I will certainly come back to you also on it. But then Simon, I saw you were eager, and you would like to comment on
I
this?
skipped the slide very fast in my presentation, but I just wanted to stress the need for independent scientific data as well, and not just allowing the industry to do their thing and then that we would just trust them in the research question they ask, in the descriptors they look at, if they forget noise or other kind of pollution. I mean, of course, there's a lot of interest in plumes and sediments at the moment, but other things can also get lost. And there is where I think public money needs to go into also independent monitoring, universities, different projects, European projects, and not just directly into the industry, which is the way that has been done quite fiercely in Norway if you compare to other countries. I think that is super important, because what we see is that industries usually, they cherry pick their studies. And one very good example is when the metals company, not to compare with what you're doing, they're very aggressive, when they commented a new study on the biodiversity effects of their tests in the Clarion-Clipperton zone, showing that there's a loss of biodiversity or loss of life within the immediate area of the extraction of 1/3. Which to me sounds very, very much, and to a lot of people, but to them it's like, yeah, but that's negligible. I mean, that's nothing. This is what we have thought about. And then there comes the question, what does the public really see as acceptable after all? The ISA has not come to a place where they have decided what is acceptable, because they don't know what's down there. They can't set the thresholds. And the experts in the so-called Legal and Technical Commission, they have said that we are not the body that can do so, because this is not only a research question, this is more of a societal question, what is acceptable or not. So should we just rely on the industry to say what's acceptable, or should we have more of a public debate about it? That is what I would like to ask.
And now Stig Morten, he would like to say a few words, and I think you, Stig Morten, you're also talking a lot about knowledge, and a lot of the knowledge is gained from different universities as well. So, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we are, as usually when we don't know a lot, we are mixing up a lot of different issues and we just throw it into the same, and then we pull up whatever we feel like to discussing. What we are discussing right now in Norway is exploration. And I think that's very important. And I also think what the ISA is discussing right now is exploitation. And if you looked at the map that you showed, Simon, even a lot of the countries that have written or signed a moratorium for the exploitation, they do have exploration licenses. So they are using the exploration to gain knowledge. And that is what we are doing in Norway. That's the approach that we have taken for petroleum. And yes, it is many ways different from seabed mining, but there are some similarities. And I also would, since you said I was wrong about what that we were first out, I still think we are the first nation that has a law. I didn't say regulation, I said a law. There's a lot of countries that had regulations. Regulations and law are not the same thing. Sweden have a regulations for seabed, because in Sweden they actually do pick up nodules from Bottenviken. Did you know that? India, they actually kicked off their first licensing round for seabed minerals 8-9 months ago. So they also have regulations. I know that. But they don't have a law for seabed minerals, and that is the difference. And that brings me back to sort of when you say you don't trust or maybe we shouldn't trust the industry. That is why we have laws, and that is why we have regulations. And I like to think that me as a regulator do manage to regulate the industry in a good way. And that comes down to trust. If you don't trust the regulator, or if you don't trust the industry, who do you trust? And I think that is a key question for a lot of us. What do we do with the science that we trust and the one we doesn't trust? Thank you.
Yeah, we will come back to that. And Anita, you are working with the industry, and I guess I hope we have been funding you. So I really hope that that this project is designed with trust and different perspectives. So both you, Anita, and Annette, you are in the same project. So Anita first.
Yeah, I would like to say that we have been working with many different industries for many years. And in Norway, it's very rare that we experience that the industry tries to impact the results or to change the results or anything. They trust what we do and accept what is being produced. And of course, that's very important that we stand on that as an independent research institute. So the research that we do in the Eminent project and in other projects can be trusted. Just a comment to Annette saying that we have the monitoring methods, we have the technology. Not for exploration. Yeah, of course we have to separate between exploration and exploitation. But we have methods to do visual surveys, to sample eDNA, for instance, on great depths. But what we don't know is how do we see the sublethal effects, because we don't know when a coral is starting to struggle just by looking at it. The same with sponges. It's the same that we see in the coastal zone now with aquaculture, for instance. There's a lot of debate about hard-bottom species and how they actually respond to stress. So we don't have the methods to do that yet. There's a lot of work being done, and some of the work being done in the coastal zone can probably be transferred to deep sea areas with some modifications at a later stage. Hopefully, we don't know that yet, but we think there are still some gaps, even though we have a lot of methods and there are technologies that can be used to do visual monitoring and some species characterization.
And Annette, is there trust between?
Yeah, I believe we are very transparent, and we disagree quite a lot on some issues, and I think that is the way to move forward. And I want to mention, Simon, we were in a meeting like a couple of years ago, and it was quite interesting to see you. We were in different rooms, so industry, and then it was researchers, and then I can't recall governmental stuff and stakeholders. Stuff. No, but it wasn't stuff. No, but governmental. It was agencies. It was agencies. Sorry, my English is not very good. And we were in different rooms, and we were supposed to kind of prioritize the different challenges in different orders. Like, what are the key challenge? And the different rooms came up with like, okay, so one room I can't recall the results, and we're probably not going to say but it was like light, sound, plumes, different things that were challenges, and the different rooms came with different answers, and that is because we are coming from different paths. So I'm not sure what you said, but let's say he said light. I would say, okay, and for my room, light is not an issue because we'll just turn off the lights. But then there are other issues that we need to work harder on to challenge. So that is what I really want to discuss. What are the key challenges? And I think that is why we should all be in not the same room, not have a research institute working on it. It should be a collaborative way of gathering this knowledge that we need. So key for me, that I would trust.
Key for you, and then you must. Simon will have the word, and so I will also come back to you. The key. You are saying the key. So what is the key? First, Simon.
The key for me is actually to distinguish between exploration and exploitation, and I think we are trying to do that. Norway, however, in the process is not really doing that, and that is the problem, because and that is also what distinguishes Norway from other countries as well who have legislation. Belgium has legislation, for instance, as well, and they put. They also have it open for exploitation, but they require the ISA to come up with the mining code first before they would issue any licenses for companies or apply for licenses with the ISA in the international area. However, Norway has a process where you, as a license holder, have two stages. You have the first stage as exploration and the second stage as an exploitation, which emulates the offshore oil and gas regulation, which is a bit of a problem because first you make a decision about an opening. You have Aquaplan Niva was involved and many others were involved in collecting the data that was then available. And then it goes out to the politicians, and then it is decided whether a company can go from exploration to exploitation by the government, the first one going to the parliament. But no opening decision will be done again, so you will not be able to look at strategic, transboundary, cumulative effects, only the environmental impacts in that licensed area. Then you will be able you will not be able to detect fish stock disturbances in if the sediment plume goes out in the food chain, and those things I think we need to have another process for. And I think the legislation should really distinguish between exploration. All right, that is one license. You can extend it if you like, but that doesn't mean that you have a license that you can then very easily come to the exploitation phase. And that is why Norway has been so heavily criticized by the EU, by international special rapporteurs, UN bodies and so on. And I think that if Norway just would have done the process differently, I think there would not have been any criticism to the exploration, because indeed we need more data and we need to employ, also industry should of course be within proper regulations involved in doing that, because you can also enlighten us on what is possible or not. But this is not done in the proper way, and that is, I think, what Norway needs to understand if you want to do it again. And now you have paused it to 2029, but perhaps you can use that pause to actually, as a decision maker, and also this is something to Stig Morten, perhaps you can go back and say, let's do it in another way.
Okay, let's hear Stig Morten. Will you do that?
The governmental stuff, I'm not sure if the government would like to hear solemn geologists tell them what to do or not to do. But it is correct that we have a different process than some other countries have for the legislation and the handling out of licenses. But that is the same process, and you alluded to that, Simon, that's the same that we have done in Norway for petroleum. And that, I think, and that is the phrase that our Prime Minister used to say, it has served us very well. And of course we can sort of be in disagreement if that process is correct or not. And that is a good and a legal discussion, to put it that way. But that's what we ended up with. And I'm not going to stand here and say we did it because of so-and-so. That's up to the ministry and also to the politicians. But again, it comes actually down to, so and that's the regulator side. If we don't think that ADEPT or anybody else that might get a license for exploration can get to the exploitation phase in a sustainable way, they will not be able to do that. And that's, I guess, where you disagree with us. And that's what I'm saying. I think we can do it. Somebody else says they don't think we can do it. And I guess that's a disagreement that we just have to face. And that is sort of the core of some of the discussions that we have on the Norwegian continental shelf, and for how we are doing the process for the opening of the seabed mineral activity.
What do you think will be the key data for the next step for Norway?
Well, I think, as I said in my presentation, the next step for Norway is to open up for that licensing round. And according to the parliament and also according to the government, we do have enough data for that, because it's already been open. What has been postponed is the licensing round. And that is a politician budgeting decision, and that's something else. So we are mixing up, but we are actually discussing.
Probably different kind of views on what is sufficient data then, I guess. So I think we have to agree upon that. Yes, Annette.
Yeah, and I want to comment on the consequences of this postponement, because that is significant. So for us, we need to do something else, of course, move elsewhere. And we were planning to, like we and the industry partners were planning to put billions of Norwegian kroners into research, innovation, technology development over the next couple of years. And that is now not going to be put into Norway. That is, those money are going to be put into elsewhere or in other industries, because if we don't see that we will have this license round, then we would need to move elsewhere. And that is very unfortunate for tomorrow, because what we were intending to do was to explore, is this an opportunity for tomorrow to both deliver the minerals that we desperately need, to create value, and do it the most responsible way. No, we've just postponed it like it's, to me it's terrible. And also to know more, like Simon is asking for. He wants to know more, and now we at least will not see that same drive as we foresaw just a couple of months ago. So that is very sad.
Okay, but Endre, yeah, you are listening to this intense discussion here, and you are sort of analyzing and the different perspectives. So, what would you think would be a good informed debate, and how should we try to facilitate that? And please also your own comments.
So one thing that really strikes me is that in this discussion now, seabed minerals is not something that people think about every day at breakfast. So it is something that I think in the court of public opinion, the precautionary principle is very strong. That at least that's what we see from our data. People in general, if they don't know about something, then they want to postpone or maybe find out more or just wait. And then I think maybe in this case in particular about how slow these ecosystems are and these sublethal effects that we don't know anything about, the species that we get mentioned that we don't know about that are being discovered every year. I think those are all things when they percolate into the public sphere, that will make people want to break this, regardless of what the facts may be. Maybe somebody here in the room knows all the species, or maybe there is knowledge that's just not out there, but it isn't out there. And from this negative emissions project that I mentioned, it's thank you. I do think that we got a lot of pushback on these technologies because people just were unsure that they would be safe, and of course not because people really knew everything about these projects, but just because that seems to be just a reaction that people have, the default. But I think also one thing that's interesting about the slide that I skipped because I talked too much, I guess, it really did show the difference in this classical question of industry versus environment, which has been asked in many countries and in Norway since the 1980s. If you saw the flicker, we have seen that we survey both citizens and people who work in governments, or bureaucrats like my neighbor here, and politicians, part-time and full-time politicians. And we see that the people in general are slightly on the side of preserving the environment, and then the civil servants are very much more on the environmental protection side, on average. I'm not saying anything about any individuals, but on average that is the case. And then full-time politicians are actually the ones that are mostly on the industry side, in the trade-offs. And there could be really two hypotheses for that, maybe could be three perhaps. But one is that they are being influenced by lobbying. But another one is that maybe politicians really know what people want, what people really want, which is employment and economic growth, and this is the way to get it. And if they don't deliver on that, maybe then, well, of course there could be other reasons as well. But I think it is quite interesting to see how these things are being adjudicated.
And you will get the words, Stig, Morten, and Simon, but then the precautionary principle. So you think that maybe the precautionary principle is losing its relevance then, or what?
No, I think that's what we're seeing with this latest budgetary deal. That is just the precautionary people have won the day. Now, they were minority parties, but it was still strong enough to make a difference. Of course, this is because some coalition partners had to get something out of the deal, and they couldn't really influence petroleum, so they had to get influence somewhere else. But I really do think that this precautionary principle has been a way of thinking, and that has really carried the day.
Thank you. I have Stig, Morten, and Simon, and Annette.
Yeah, thank you. I studied geology, but I also studied quite a lot of psychology. And I think this is really interesting, sort of, as I alluded to in my presentation, how much do you need to know before you make a decision? And which decision do you dare to take, given that you know this or that? And I think that's something that we face every day. It doesn't have to be scientists. That's what you do when you take up a loan or whatever, and so and so. And that also brings me back to sort of where are we in Norway on that? And how is the industry development going? And what do we do and what do we don't do, and etc. And it really goes for Europe as well. And we don't do the geopolitical stuff here, and etc. etc. But that is a big issue, and I think it gets really banged down to also seabed minerals, because that's what we see right now. So that's one part of it, the uncertainty and how much risk, because it is a risk. I agree, there's a lot of risks, and it all comes down to how do you mitigate that risk. And the other part is, how do you manage to tell that this is that and that or that much risky? How do you get airtime to explain, to show pictures like Annette showed, instead of those beautiful hydrothermal systems that Simon showed, which, by the way, is not open for exploration or exploitation or anything on the Norwegian continental shelf. So which view do you want to take, and which pictures do you want to put into your mind when you make your decisions for the risk you would like to take or not take?
Thank you, Stig Morten.
Thank you, sorry.
Yeah,
That's a philosophical...
yeah, it's relevant to every day, to whatever we do. So, Simon.
But also very practical, of course, and you can ask the independent scientists who work on this and who have worked for a very long time on the deep sea, and they say, in general, it requires 10 to 15 years to look at the deep sea as all the different descriptors that they look into, all the Latin names, their functions in the different ecosystems that I showed. 10 to 15 years, depending on the area. It is reasonable to assume that we have good enough knowledge to start regulating. And then you will need to, of course, have impact data as well to employ different technologies. And I do think that we should listen to independent data, independent scientists, because otherwise we go into a Trumpism narrative where we say, what can we believe? Industry is as much important as others, or this philosopher is as much important as others. I think it's very important that we deem science as the knowledge provider, and that we deem it important, and that we also have a science policy interface that works out. And that is why I think 40 countries and growing are coming out with precautionary pause moratorium positions, because they would like to give a breathing space for science, not to stress them out, because science takes time, and especially deep sea science, that takes time. And during that time, of course, companies like others can go and do exploration. They can work with other holders of exploration licenses in the ISA. They could absolutely find partnerships. Many do. But to bully a country and say, if we don't do it here, we do it with the US, who is threatening international law, I don't think that's a very fruitful conversation. I don't think that is really respecting science and the process that it takes to impose the precautionary principle in practice. I don't think that is how you are a good PR, to be honest. That you don't do good PR in this. And I think for us, to NGOs and industry, to have a good collaboration, I think we have to have another type of language.
Okay, yeah. Annette. Your language.
Sorry. I don't know what I said, but what I would like to say is, okay, so science may take time. And I asked some of these they are not working with me. I asked some of these scientists who says it takes time. And then I asked, why did it take time? Why does it take time? And that is very important to ask. Why does it take time? I don't have access to the technology. I do not have the funding I need. So I asked a taxonomist. He said, this will take 20 years to do. And I said, yeah, okay. So if you had the funding, how long time, if you had the people, how long time would it take? A year. So that is like, we need to ensure that we get the knowledge at the right time. It's not because that is very important. And I wanted to go back to the precaution principle. And I think that word is misused quite a bit, because precaution doesn't mean inaction, no action. It means that we should gather more knowledge. It means that we should do it in a carefully structured manner. So, and that is what I've read the rules, the law, the regulations quite carefully, and they're quite strict. They are stricter than very many mines that operate, most mines that operate on land ever have to go through. I think, I talked to a lawyer that said, okay, probably top 10 mines on land would deliver as strict as this, as the Norwegian regulations. So we would really have to step up our game. And it's really, so I don't think this is a very, it's not fast forward regulations that we are in here. So, but I would really go back to that precaution that we need data, but we need to get, we need to get the data. And this precaution is used to delay rather than collect data. And that is a mistake I find here.
But now, Stig Morten, you are eager and you'll have the floor very soon. But the audience, you are sitting here. And then I think maybe some of you also are considering quite a lot about this balance. Do we have sufficient knowledge? What about the precautionary principle? Yes, we really should not have put it on hold. No, we have to start deep sea mining. It's urgent. No, we have to be careful, and we need more knowledge about the environment, and so on and so forth. And you have 5 persons here, absolutely very experienced. Any questions? Any comments? That one. Yes, I think you must have. Maybe I could have some help.
Hello.
And please say who you are.
My name is Sigrid Nielsen, and I'm from the Center for the Ocean and the Arctic, based here in Tromsø. I have a question. It's a bit philosophical, so I'll try to frame it in a short way. And the question is about Norway as an outlier when it comes to trust. And trust, for me, is a prerequisite for good coexistence. And good coexistence, I include government, scientists, interests, balancing interests. And I'm wondering, are we now seeing a discussion are we in Norway more vulnerable to importing distrust from the outside, or are we vulnerable to being exploited for our trustful societies when it comes to seabed mining? Because I hear the Norwegian part of the panel, they seem to be speaking as in, we trust each other, we go far back, we follow the laws, we trust the regulators, and that Norway is an outlier on that, whereas I see the international NGO being more, we see this in other countries where we do not have trust, and you're using Trumpism as a way of bringing it in. And I just wonder, are we talking about different things here? Are Norway more vulnerable or stronger because of our trust? Thank you.
And Stig Morten, you had already, so you can start.
Wow, yeah, thanks. That's a very good question. I don't know if I have a final answer to it, of course, because it is a really big one. Yeah, whether we are more vulnerable. In some ways, I think we are. And I think that's, if I put it on the far extreme, I don't know if I want to do that, but that is probably why industry development is put on hold in Norway, including seabed minerals, including mines onshore, including Fensfelt, including oil drilling in the Arctic, and etc. All these discussions that we have had, including wind turbines, onshore, offshore, wherever. So I think that trust is vulnerable, and I think also I don't want to go as far as saying it's going to be Trumpism, but I think yes, it is vulnerable, and I think that also maybe is a precautionary principle. How do we take care of that trust? How do we take care of that trust? We standing here from NGOs and industry and regulators and science, and et cetera, and it's very difficult. And I also think if you continue to shout wolf, wolf, and if you continue to exploit that trust thing, I think we're going to end up like complete chaos, more or less. So it's a very fine balance, what we are doing or not doing and how we are doing it.
Thank you, Stig
Thank
Morten.
you.
Yeah, please, and then Simon afterwards.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the question of trust, which is a really good question. So is trust, and we know from the data that in Scandinavia, in Northern Europe, trust is much higher. Generalized trust, can people be trusted, than in other parts of the world? And is that something that makes society work more smoothly, or is it a source of vulnerability? And of course, the answer is yes. because you do get a lot of much lower transaction costs in general in economic terms. Much more can be done, but at the same time you get some really bad examples of. So I think a big one is not environmental, but this social service payment that where people put in jail for breaking laws that weren't actually real or weren't really EU compliant. So I think we can have some. It can help us a lot, but it can also really be problematic at times.
Thank you, Andrea. And Simon?
No, go ahead.
No, I think when I talk about Trumpism, of course, I refer also to the Trump administration's speeding up the processing of extracting deep sea minerals within their continental shelves, but also in international areas. Because that's what I mean with Trumpism then, is that we defy environmental data, we defy international law, we do whatever we want. And we trust those who are aligned with what we want, basically. And that is dangerous. That is super dangerous. And that defies the international legal order. It defies the ISA. It defies the common principle of humankind, the common heritage of humankind, which is enshrined in international law. And Norway is the country who really supports international regulations and the effective protection of the marine environment being one of the articles there as well. So I think it's really important for a country that supports this international ocean governance framework to also, in practice, in its own turf, try to make an example of that and try to design processes that are actually as transparent and as science-based as possible. Now, when this pause, which of course we welcome, because it gives that time for more data to be employed, and especially for public, for universities. We heard yesterday a brilliant presentation from University of Bergen researchers on what they're doing since 1999 and before. We allow them during this time to actually gather that data and trust that data. And I do believe that for a country like Norway, I think we should take that time. And for those companies who would like to work on deep sea minerals to go to the US, that is really putting that trust at risk.
Thank you. And then Anita. And there was another question down there, and too. So I think Anita first, and then the question.
Yeah, just a brief comment from researchers' perspectives. I think that the trust that we see between research industry and governmental organizations in Norway, of course, is a strength because we are able to work together. We trust each other. So in that way, I think having that close dialogue is a strength. But I do see the perspective from your side, but it can also be a weakness since things will take time. And of course, if you ask a scientist, when do we have enough data? We say never.
Okay.
We always need more research.
Thank you, Anita. There was a question there, and then I think it was down there. But please.
Okay. Yes, the misuse of the term precautionary principle was alluded to, and I think that is also has my name is Felix Tschudi from Tschudi Group, and that also has an impact on trust and public trust, because it also goes the other way. If we dismiss the scientists funded by companies, but we believe in all the other scientists funded by whoever it is, we know that people in science, everyone has intentions or views before they, originally, and they do the research and very often come out with the outcomes which suit the original views. And so I think the precautionary principle, which is of course a completely logical one, but it is being misused. It's being misused in order to postpone every process. And then at the same time, we're facing a situation where holistically, this part of the world needs minerals and metals. So there's a much bigger picture, which is about, how do you balance these different aspects? And so I think the precautionary principle really needs to be tightened up. And like Stig Morten said, it's about finding where are the limits, what can be acceptable. If not, it will backfire, and then you get Trumpism. Then you really get Trumpism the other way.
Okay, thank you. I think I will, before you answer, I think we'll take another comment on or
Okay.
question.
Thank you.
Was some,
My name is Linus Hammar. I'm from the Swedish Polar Research Secretariat. Thank you for a very interesting debate, Shirley. I like to think about other emerging technologies. If we compare with hydropower, for instance, I think we can say that it had much worse environmental impact than was initially anticipated. But if we look at offshore wind, for instance, it's the opposite. There was a lot of uncertainty and debate, and so far we don't see any major impact. So I'm thinking about the Collingridge dilemma, that in the early phase of technology you have a lot of uncertainty, but it's also easy to do regulations. But once the technology is there, we know what happens, but it's more difficult to regulate it. So in my mind, from what I hear here, I think maybe it would make sense to see more what is the actual impact. Do you think that it would make sense to have a pilot test on commercial scale so that could be studied, but not warranting that others could go ahead with an open market?
Thank you. And the last question there, and then I will give Annette the opportunity to answer first. I think it was that one. That is the last one, because then we have to.
Thank you so much. My name is Solrun Figenskjær. I'm Chief Development Officer at the Norwegian Institute for Water Research. Thank you so much for a very interesting and quite enlightening debate, I think. I work a lot with offshore wind, and I do see some parallels. And Stig Morten, you talk a lot about how much knowledge do we need and what knowledge do we trust. And like Anita said, researchers will always ask for more knowledge. And in truth, you can't get all the answers before you've actually done some exploration and some, in fact, even some proper extraction. You do get some answers in that process as well. But I do think the crux here in many ways is, do we trust the Norwegian government to move from exploitation to extraction and the licenses there? And we have exactly the same discussion in offshore wind. And one of the key things we've seen in our research is this: how adaptive can management be? And I should say I have a background from the private sector and the Norwegian Environment Agency. I'm not a researcher, actually. How can we trust that you, once the knowledge has been gathered in the exploration phase, that you will actually integrate that properly into decision-making processes, and that you will make solid decisions based on that? Because we do know there will be political pressure once you get into that stage. Industry has invested, there will be pressure. And this process isn't very transparent at the moment. How are you going to move from A to B? So Stig Morten, what will you do? How will you handle this process? And how can we ensure trust and transparency in moving from exploitation, integrating the knowledge, and getting to extraction? And in parallel with that, how much will you put into the Research Council to make sure that we can actually properly get more knowledge to integrate into that?
Thank you very much, especially the last statement. But I think, Annette, we have only a very few minutes. We don't even have 2 minutes left.
Okay,
so I'll give the floor to everyone.
I'll
now,
comment very
Annette.
briefly. So getting this, we need it now. We see that in the world. And we need to continue to build knowledge. And we need to have a transparent process, and I believe we do. Just read, but it's needed to read carefully. But just to comment on the technology. During the creation of this, it's not going to be like offshore wind. We have lab data that shows that we can potentially produce this without even taking up a rock. We just need to produce liquids, water, copper water, or containing those minerals we need. And that is significant. So if we can do that, then this will be definitely the most responsible minerals we would ever see produced in the world. And we need it now. So I just want to say, get going to collect more data, because then we have the choice to do responsible decisions tomorrow, rather than sudden decisions down the line when we need it the most. So, yeah.
Thank you. And then Stig Morten.
Thank you. First to Sweden. I think what Annette just showed today is that yes, we would like to do pilots, and yes, they've already been done, and I think there should be more of them, and that should be done in parallel with what we are doing with gathering data, being environmental and resource. So I think that's part of the. But yes, and absolutely, I think it's a brilliant idea. What I'm going to do, so you can trust me, I'm not sure. I'm just a civil servant, But we are, of course, fully aware of that complexity, to put it that way. And if there's any place, I know a lot about offshore wind. I've been working with that as well. I've been part of that directorate group and so on. So there are some similarities. But I think especially on the deep sea mining, we are going to be watched. And if that helps for transparency, that's fine. And we're going to have open discussions, and we're going to have our disagreements. But I think that I don't have a better answer than actually that. That's the only way. That's the way we have done it in Norway, and that's the way I think it's going to continue. I don't think there's a silver bullet to it, but it's a complex one, and we are aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Endre, your last words.
Thank you. I think from Trudy, a great point about the precautionary principle. Maybe we should have a panel on that next year. And then we can also talk about how much data do we need and what does it mean. And I also find Figensko's point about the slippery slope. If we get if we sink a lot of resources into knowledge, well, then we kind of have to do the project in the end, don't we? So that will be part of the panel we'll organize. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Simon and Anita will have the last one. Simon?
I mean, in a hypothetical scenario, if we just want to start now and do adaptive management, like we set the thresholds later, do first, ask later, of course, then the question is, can we monitor the environmental impacts? Can we enforce as a regulator punishment if you don't do what you say? Can we ask the contractor to do restoration efforts? We would like to know that first, if that is the case. And we don't have any answers on those questions at the moment. Pilot tests have been done, and impact tests have been done. And there are potentially irreversible effects due to those studies. And no restoration efforts are economically feasible. We have not heard about such restoration measures being part of the Norwegian projects. That would also be nice to look into, of course. So there's so much things to still learn about the deep sea, about the impacts. And I think we need to take that time to do so. And that is why we yet again called for a moratorium, and Norway to join the 40 countries already doing that.
Thank you, Simon. And then Anita?
Yes, thank you. I think I'll just end by applauding what Solund said, maybe, because, and also you, Annette, that now that the process has been stopped in Norway, I really hope that the knowledge gathering doesn't stop, because that is extremely important. Now is the time to get the data that we need, and of course, going with the industry is a good option to get a lot of data also for the scientists. So now we might have to do it in another way, so through the Research Council. So I really would hope that the funding doesn't go away and that we still are able to work with this very important and very interesting field.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the panelist speakers. And yes, there will be a call on these issues from the Research Council. And I'm quite sure that we are probably very different minds about if we want a delay or not. But I think we all agree upon we need more knowledge and we need action in that way or in that way. That's up to you. So thank you very much for attending this session, and I hope it has been enlightening for you. So have a nice day.